Good morning, children. How are you? I hope you are all well. I am Padma Kumari, working as Social Studies CRT at KGBV Sompeta in Srikakulam district. Today, we will learn the lesson The World Between Wars 1900 to 1950 Part 2. In this chapter, we will learn about Russian Socialist Revolution, rise of Stalin, the Great Depression, rise of Nazism in Germany, the defeat and end. We will learn about Russian Socialist Revolution. Russia was a vast landmass spread over two continents, Europe and Asia. The kings who ruled Russia, called Tsars, had the third largest population country after China and India. The population of Russia was 56 million. Consisted of several nations like Russia, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenia, etc. Most people in Russia depended on agriculture. Feudal lords owned most of the lands and most peasants paid for the land they tilled. The conflicts between the feudal landlords and peasants. Already, we are told that the kings who ruled Russia were called Tsars. At that time, Tsar Nicholas II was ruled Russian Empire with the help of army and bureaucracy. Because of the First World War from 1914 to 1918. That includes Russia's participation in it, also reduced the economic situation of Russia. The Russian army was the largest in the world before World War I. Yet by 1917, the Russia had lost 2 million soldiers and civilians and became the biggest loser of human lives in World War I. Diverting food to the battlefield caused food shortages in the towns, bread shortages, as well as loss of peace due to war. On March 8, 1917, around 10,000 women of the capital, St. Petersburg, took out a procession demanding peace and bread. Workers were also involved. Unnerved at the protest in the capital, Tsar Nicholas II ordered the army to suppress the demonstrators even by firing at them. The soldiers joined the demonstrators. In just 2 days, the situation went so much out of hand that the Tsar Nicholas II abdicated. Non-aristocratic Russians made a provisional government. This was the first Russian Revolution of 1917 and it was also called the March Revolution. The next big revolution was happened in October 1917. It was not spontaneous. The liberals and aristocrats who ruled Russia after the abdication of the Tsar decided to continue the war to preserve the honor of the fatherland. General public who opposed war formed groups known as the Soviets. Soviets of soldiers, industrial workers and also people of common people's power, which was channelized by a group of Russian Communist Party called Bolsheviks. Bolsheviks were led by Vladimir Lenin. And unconditional peace, nationalization of all land and redistribution of peasants. Control over prices and nationalization of all banks were the demands of the Soviets. Taking up these demands, the Bolsheviks they were able to win the confidence of the Soviets. Soviets under Bolsheviks seized our provincial government and immediately ended the war and redistributed the land. Full peace could not be restored. Anti-communist soldiers supported by Britain, the USA, France and Japan started a civil war. They were all defeated by 1920. Bolsheviks announced the ending of the Russian Empire and permitted the various nations under it to become independent. However, gradually most of the former Empire's nations agreed to join the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, that is, what are the countries that were already in Tsar Empire? Russia, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenia, etc. This was set up in 1924 by Soviet government in Russia. Let us learn about the Russian Revolution. Russia followed the Julian calendar until February 1918. It became the Gregorian calendar used worldwide. Gregorian dates are 13 days ahead of the Julian dates. Therefore, according to our calendar, the February Revolution took place on 12th March and the October Revolution took place on 7th November. Now, let us see timeline chart. Debates over socialism in Russia 1850 to 1880. Let's find out what is socialism. Socialism is populist economic and political system based on public ownership of the means of production Means include the machinery, tools and factories used to produce goods that aim to directly satisfy human needs. Formation of the Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party happened in 1898. Bloody Sunday and the Revolution, called Bloody Sunday. Bloody Sunday refers to several violent incidents, confrontations in history. Russia, it refers to the schooling of armed civilians by Tsarist soldiers in Petersburg. January 1905, this caused the deaths of many people and triggered the outbreak of 1905 revolution. On 2nd March, abdication of the Tsar. 24th October, Bolshevik uprising in Petrograd, which happened in 1917. The Civil War, that is a war between citizens of the same country. It was happened in 1918 to 1920. One formation of Comintern. It was an international organization, 1919. Beginning of collectivization, it was happened in 1929. Based on the timeline chart, which was the first country that established the Soviet socialist government in the world, USSA. Why did the civil war occur in Russia? Civil war was broke out between Bolshevik group and White Army for establishment of socialism and political monarchism, economic capitalism. Do you understand the timeline chart, children? Now let us go to women in the February Revolution. Marfa Vasilova was a milling machine operator working in the Lawrence telephone factory. Then stopped work and called for strike. The workers on the floor were ready to support her. The foreman informed the management and sent her a loaf of bread. She took the bread but refused to go back to work. The administrator asked her why she refused to work, and she replied, "I cannot be the only one satiated when others are hungry." Men workers from another section of the factory gathered around Marfa in support, and gradually all the other women ceased working. Soon the men also joined the strike. Children, do you understand it? During the First World War, food shortages, Marfa Vasileva struggled to all people to get bread. Now let us find out the October Revolution, the Russian countryside. Tuvis. News of the revolutionary uprising of 25, 1917 village the following day and was treated with enthusiasm. The day news arrived, the landowner's house was looted, his stock farms were burned, and his vast orchard was cut down and sold to the peasants for wood. His four buildings were torn down and left in, while the land was distributed among the peasants who were prepared to live the new Soviet life. Taken from the History of Soviet Collective Form written by Fedor Belov. The family member who owned the land was his relative about what happened on the estate. It happened painlessly, quietly and peacefully. While Mikhailovich, the estate owner, was calm. The girls also calm. They had only 2 cows and 2 horses. What do we mean by this? The landlords was seized and distributed to the landless peasants. Now let us go to Central Asia of the October Revolution. Roy played an important role in Comintern, international organization to promote communist revolution in the world. In Central Asia at the time of the Civil War in 20s, he wrote, Newton was benevolent man. The young man who helped him one speak Russian. He heard that the Tsar had fled and that the generals who captured his homeland were defeated. He gave independence to Kyrgyz. Long live the revolution, shouted the Kyrgyz youth who seemed to be a born Bolshevik. Taken from the memoirs written by M.N. Roy in 1964. Let's go to another topic, rise of Stalin. Stalin became leader of Communist Party after the death of Lenin in 1924. Over the next decades, he established his absolute control and put an end to all opposition, to undisputed power to build the economy of USSR. In 1928, USSR undertook planned development under the 5-year plan, pursued a twin policy of rapid industrialization and collectivization of agriculture. The USSR under the leadership of Stalin tried to end small peasants' production by forming small and large farmers to surrender their lands and join collective farms, share the products. Everyone farmed together and the products were shared by the members. The idea was shift from small farming to large scale farming so that techniques and machines could be used. Thousands of farmers who opposed it were imprisoned. sent abroad and sentenced to death. A severe famine occurred in 1929 to 1930 and a very large number of people died. Initially, agriculture production declined. After the USSR achieved industrialization, increased agricultural production. All industries were owned by the state, which did not allow free market system. Still, products are sold directly to consumers. However, the working conditions were not well. The living conditions of all the workers were very difficult. The plant was built in 3 years in a town called Togox. Workers lived had lives, and the result was 550 stoppages of work last year alone. Extended schooling system developed and arrangements made for factory workers and peasants to other universities were established in factories for the children of working women. Cheap public health care was provided, model living quarters for workers. However, all this was incomplete. Government had less food available. USSR achieved full employment for all its citizens and was able to improve their standard of living daily. It also provided to specialized literacy and primary education. During this period, the Western world was facing a severe Great Depression. Of workers lost their jobs as a result of the closure of factories, and thousands of found the prices of their goods down as demand for them collapsed. The shutting down of factories. However, USSR was able to escape the effect of the depression because it was not integrated with the international market. Secondly, government had decided what to produce and how much produced due to the existence of a planned economic policy. This enabled between demand and supply. This was achieved by concentrating power in the hands of Communist Party leaders. These were not even given general freedom. A large number of opposition leaders were killed. Of the USSR inspired by people all over the world who were committed to the ideas of equality and national liberation. Do you understand it? We say that the experience USSR inspired people all over the world, including India. The experience of the USSR inspired people all over the world committed to the ideals of equality and national liberation. Many of them, like Rabindranath Tagore and Nehru, were inspired by it, though they did not agree with many aspects of communism, like of opposition political parties. George Orwell wrote his famous satire form to highlight how the ideals of Russian Revolution were merged in USSR. Let us find out what Rabindranath Tagore wrote in 1930 from Russia. Moscow appears much less clean than the other European capitals because the whole place belonged to the workers. Here, the masses have not in the least been put in the shade by the gentlemen. Those who lived in the background for ages have come forward in the open today. Thought of the peasants and workers in our own country. It all seemed like the work of the genie in the Arabian Nights. Only a decade ago, they were as illiterate, helpless, and hungry as our own masses. Who could be more astonished than an unfortunate Indian like myself to see how they had removed the mountain of ignorance and helplessness in these few years? That is what Rabindranath Tagore might have thought of Indians here. Similarly, the Russians fought against their monarchy, as it is understood that Rabindranath Tagore wanted that the ignorance Indians to achieve independence by fighting the British to get out of helplessness. Let's go to another topic, Great Depression. Great Depression began around the end of 1929 and lasted almost till 1939. This decade, there was a worldwide economic decline triggered by a decline in demand and fall in prices. Called Great Depression because of the depression, factories closed as demand fell and people's purchasing power declined. Employment had risen, real incomes of the people had declined. This had affected people as well as governments. It initially began with a stock market collapse in the USA, that means United States of America, but before long affected almost every country. Employers rose to 25% in America and 33% in many other countries. Factories closed down and declined, cities became centers of decline. The prices of agricultural products had dropped by 60%. Millions of farmers became poor and stopped farming. This was the longest and most severe economic decline faced by modern economy till today. It had social consequences sharply, poverty, pollution, homelessness, etc. About the causes of this crisis, Marxist economists argued that end of crisis is an essential nature of capitalism and can be got rid of only with the establishment of socialism. Let us know what is capitalism and socialism. Capitalism is based on individual initiative and favors market mechanisms over government intervention, while socialism based government planning and limitations on private control of resources. On the other hand, economists like J.M. Keynes argued that it had a crucial role to play in keeping the economy going and fails to finance effectively, it can lead to situations of depression. Keynes argued that during time of economic decline, demand decreases, the state should invest funds and generate employment. It will help people to earn money and demand goods in the market. Generation of demand through state action will help the economy revive. However, the governments of capitalist countries in 1920s and 1930s were reluctant to intervene in the economy and this inspired the crisis. Roosevelt, who became the president of US, announced bail. Accordingly, relief to the victims of reform of financial institutions and steps to economic recovery were taken. The US government had spent a lot of money for this. Roosevelt also introduced the much needed social security system in the USA. He established a permanent system of universal retirement pensions, unemployment insurance and welfare benefits for the handicapped and needy children in families. Father present. It established the framework for US welfare system. What was the period of World War I? In 1914 to 1918. That is, in 1914, before the start of World War I, Britain had launched unemployment insurance and old-age pension schemes. By the end of World War II, 1945, the Britain also included social security measures such as unemployment doles, sickness coverage, health schemes, childcare, etc. All these contributed to the formation of the welfare state. Accordingly, the welfare state ensured a certain basic minimum dignified life for all citizens and took care of their most elementary needs like food, housing, health, education, child and old age care, etc. Government provided payment to those who could work. In this way, the state tried to treat the towns of market-based capitalism. Do you understand this topic? Now let us learn about rise of Nazism in Germany. Already learned about the war losses payments in Germany after the First World War in the lesson. Because of this, German economy faced severe crisis. With this, German government want to print mostly currency notes, caused inflation to rise. This means that due to inflation, some items in the market have to pay a very high amount of money. Hence, it is said people had to carry currency in carts to buy one loaf of bread. USA at this stage helped to bail out money by giving loans and rescheduling the payment of war damage. But this was short-lived as USA was deeply affected by the onset of the Depression in 1929 and could no longer Germany. German economy was the worst depression. By 1932, industrial production was reduced to 40% of the 1929 level. Workers lost their jobs. The number of unemployed has reached millions. On the street of Germany, men were seen holding placards around their necks saying, "Willing to do any work." Jobs disappeared. The youth took to criminal activities and total despair became commonplace. The economic crisis created deep and fears in people. The middle classes saw their savings when the currency lost its value. Small businessmen, the self-employed and retailers suffered as their business got drained. Only organized workers were able to come to the fore. Farmers were affected as prices of agricultural products fell. Unable to fill their children's stomach were filled with a sense of deep despair. In women. Political instability, the government collapsed and without stable rule. In these circumstances, the Nazi party campaign hoped to so many people that he was the undisputed leader. 1932, it had become the largest party with 37% votes. Hitler was a powerful speaker. He passionate and words people. He promised to build a strong nation under the justice of the Versailles and restore the dignity of the German people. He promised employment for those looking for work and secure further for the youth. He promised to combat all foreign influences and resist all foreign policies against Germany. Now let us go to from Hitler's speech. Hitler argued that it is the right of the most powerful race to conquer the world. For this act is not allotted to anyone, nor presented to anyone as a gift. It is by providence to people who in their hearts have the courage to conquer it, the strength to preserve it, and the industry to put it flag. The primary right of this world is the right to life. So far as one says the strength for this. Hence, on the basis of this right, a vigorous nation will always find ways of adapting its territory, population size. Taken from Hitler's secret book. Children, do you understand it? Here, it is understood that Hitler had the idea of conquering the world. Hitler created a new way of policies. He understood how to mobilize the masses and make incline towards him. He conducted many rallies to mobilize the common people. The red banners with the swastik, Nazi salute, and the organized rounds of claps after the speeches were all part of this spectacle of power. Hitler mobilized his supporters on the promise of establishing the racial supremacy of Aryan Germans over the world and by protecting minority communities like Jews as the main cause of all problems. He also attacked communism and socialism, terming both of them as Jewish races, and promised to build a strong state which will cover both. Hitler's words were well liked by middle class people who were scared with Great Depression and capitalism. He came to power and immediately took steps to establish an undemocratic and autocratic rule and until all democratic institutions like Parliament. 24th March 1933, the famous Enabling Act was passed. Gave Hitler all powers to in Parliament and rule by decree. Political parties and trade unions were banned except Nazi Party. It established complete control economy, media, army and judiciary. Police in green uniform and the stormtroopers SA. These included the Gestapo, state police, correction squads SS, criminal police and the security service ST, such as were formed to control society in the way is wanted. These constitutional authorities had brought the government as a horrible criminal government. People could be detained in Gestapo torture chambers, rounded up and sent to concentration camps and arrested without any legal procedures. Powers were used to arrest and torture millions of political activists, trade unionists and people of minority communities. Hitler assigned the responsibility of economic recovery to the economist Palmer Schokist, who aimed to production and full employment through a state-funded work program. The scheme built the fastest roads in Germany. The people's cars the Volkswagen. As the war proceeded, the Nazi unfolded its horrible program of building the racial supremacy of Germans by mass elimination of minority community. Germany committed genocide during World War II, which resulted in the mass murder of groups of innocent civilians of Europe. The number of people included about 3 lakhs Jews, 2 lakhs Gypsies, 10 lakhs police civilians, 20,000 Germans who were considered mentally and physically disabled, 10,000 homosexuals besides vulnerable political opponents or people of different religious faith. Invented brutal methods to kill people, that is by gassing them in various killing centers like Auschwitz. Children, do you understand it? Let us learn about indoctrination. This taught to their children Nazi ideology of racial supremacy of Germany, the greatness of Hitler and hatred for Jews and other people. All boys between the ages of 6 and 10 through a preliminary training in Nazi ideology. Speeches were they made after the end of the training in the presence of this blood I vow to dedicate all my strength to the of our country. Adolf Hitler, Robert Lee, head of the German Labour Front, said. We start when the child is 3 years old. We will give him a small flag to swing. The schools also have Hitler Youth military service. Whether they like it or not, they are Nazis. Children, do you understand it? Now let us learn about women under Nazis. In an address to women at the Nuremberg Party rally, 8 September 1934, Hitler said, every child that women bring to the world is a battle waged for the existence of her people. And he said the woman is the most stable element in the preservation of a folk. The most sense of everything that is important to not let a race here because it is her children who would be affected by all this suffering in the first place. Then do you understand it? Now let us learn about timeline chart 2. Proclamation of the Weimar Republic, November 9, 1918. Hitler becomes Chancellor of Germany in January 30, 1933. Germany invades Poland. Beginning of the Second World War was started in November 1, 1939. Germany invades the USSR June 22, 1941. Mass murder of the Jews begins 23rd, 1941. United States joins Second World War December 8, 1941. State troops liberate Auschwitz October 27, 1945. Victory in Europe May 1945. We find out now following the timeline chart what are the main incidents which occurred in 1941 in world's history. Germany invaded the USSR. Second one, mass murder of the Jews begins. Third one, the United States joins the Second World War. Children, do you understand the timeline chart? Now let's go to another topic, the defeat and end. Germany lost the Stalingrad War between Germany and the USSR in 1943. The USSR captured the German capital Berlin. And his close associates committed suicide too, being captured and tried. Finally, Germany divided into two, with the eastern part named German Democratic Republic (GDR) and the western portion named Federal Republic of Germany (FRG). German Democratic Republic came under the area of influence of USSR. The FGR came under the influence of USA. Let us look at the map of another Axis country, Japan. Area in 1942 under Japanese control. This map in 1942, which neighboring country of India was occupied by Japan? Neighboring country of India that was occupied by Japan was Burma. The area under control of Japan is a part of which ocean? Pacific Ocean. Which Dutch East India called now? Dutch East India is now called as Indonesia. The United States bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, occupying Japanese territory. The Japanese continued the emperor at the will of the Japanese. Built a constitutional monarchy like in England. Japan was to be ruled by the government responsible to the parliament died. The parliament was called died. It was so the court sentenced only 11 of the Nazi generals in Germany to death. Others were sentenced to life imprisonment. Severity of their punishment was very low compared to the severity of Nazi crime. Given the economic collapse of Germany and Japan after the war, the USA came up with Marshall Plan and their economic revival. Likewise, USSR came up with a package for the revival of East European countries. World War II in 1950, countries like China, Indonesia, Vietnam, Egypt, Nigeria, etc. became independent. Britain, which was the most powerful country before the war, now became power. Two new superpowers emerged on the world scene, USSR and USA. USSR was now joined by the entire Eastern Europe, China to form a large Soviet socialist camp. Now I will give some questions related to the lesson. The answers in your notebook. What was the first revolution of 1917? Second one, discuss the rise of Stalin in the USSR. One, what was the Great Depression? How was the world affected by it? Fourth one, explain the rise of Nazism in Germany. Okay children, thank you.